Getting some grays in my sideburns. The world is stressing me out. This is a very difficult subject that I'm going to be discussing with you today, so I really need you to pay attention and listen with an open mind and an open heart. A very troubling event happened during winter break at the start of the 2021 year. One of the hallmarks of our democracy in the United States is the peaceful transfer of power from one president or from one administration to another. It is an acknowledgement that power does not rest with the individuals in office, but with the American people who go to the ballot box every election. This is why the United States has been a beacon of democracy and hope, a shining city on a hill to the rest of the world. However, on Wednesday, January 6th, 2021, a violent mob of domestic terrorists, yes, terrorists, carried out an insurrection against the very seat of our democracy, the Capitol building, where both the House and Senate, in a joint session, were conducting their constitutional duty of counting electoral votes. These domestic terrorists broke through security barriers, they overwhelmed and assaulted the police, they smashed through windows using riot shields, and they broke into our very Capitol building, wandering the halls with their Trump flags, and stole property, destroyed property. They sat at Nancy Pelosi's desk, Speaker Pelosi's desk. They sat at the presiding officer's desk in the Senate chambers. They desecrated the heart of our American democracy, all because they did not like the outcome of the 2020 election. Now, this act of sedition, this act of domestic terrorism, resulted in the deaths of 5 people, including a police officer who was bludgeoned with a fire extinguisher by the angry mob. It was only after the National Guard was called in, much later, that this seditious mob was pushed back away from the Capitol and Congress was able to resume, they were able to reconvene and finish the duty of counting the electoral votes and certifying the election win of President-elect Joe Biden, who will be the 46th President of the United States of America. Now, how did we get to this insane point in our nation's history? One could argue that it's been coming for quite some time because of our political divisions, increased polarization, the rhetoric that's used by politicians and in the media and amongst the public themselves. But really, we can look back throughout the political career, if you could call it that, of Trump. Wednesday's insurrection was the culmination, the climax of 4 or 5 years of Trump's encouragement of violence, spreading conspiracy theories and lies, and sowing mistrust of our news, of our democratic institutions, our elections, through speeches and Twitter. Let's look at some examples. So on the day he announced his candidacy in 2015, he made the insane and incredibly racist remarks that immigrants from Mexico were
bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
And he kind of said, well, maybe some of them were good, I don't know.
And some, I assume, are good people.
But this was dangerous language to use against people, immigrants who are already marginalized and who live in the shadows of our communities. And then during that campaign, he threatened violence against people in his audience, against critics. He encouraged people to punch people in the audience, to body slam reporters, and he said that he would pay the legal fees of those individuals who carried out violence.
I love the old days. You know what they used to do to guys like that when they were in a place like this? They'd be carried out on a stretcher, folks. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you.
He even acknowledged the blind loyalty of his supporters when he said that he could go out into the street and shoot someone and he still wouldn't lose votes.
They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that? Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
And most famously, if not infamously, in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a Unite the Right rally was held, white supremacists carrying tiki torches, Nazi flags, Confederate flags, clashed with anti-racist protesters, resulting in the death of a woman. The next day, Trump went out and said, there's very fine people on both sides.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue.
I'm sorry, but if you are marching with people carrying Nazi flags and Confederate flags, you are not a very fine person. He justified hateful violence on that day. Later, he suggested that someone should go out and attack football players who took a knee during the national anthem.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
And then during the COVID pandemic, he made threats against various governors who put in place safety protocols and procedures and guidelines to keep the public safe during what was a pandemic. One governor, Governor Whitmer of Michigan, he targeted and even sent out a tweet saying, liberate Michigan. And that's what his followers attempted to do by arming themselves and storming the Capitol in Michigan. The FBI even uncovered a plot by a militia in Michigan to kidnap and potentially kill the governor of Michigan. So as you can see, there's a very clear pattern of incitement and encouragement of violence from Trump. All of this violent rhetoric came to a crescendo, came to a climax with the 2020 election. Trump had been making false claims leading up to the election that the election would somehow be rigged or fraudulent, that there would be cheating, which would prevent Trump from winning a second term. All of this, of course, completely unfounded. So then it wasn't a surprise when election results started to pour in, especially with the absentee and mail-in ballots, and Biden was taking the lead in the election. Trump claimed falsely, without evidence, that Biden was cheating, that the election was being stolen from him. He made these false claims, lies, on his Twitter account and his speeches repeatedly.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret.
To the point that Twitter even started marking Trump's tweets with a warning that Trump's tweets were containing false information. Dangerously, his supporters began parroting and repeating these false claims because they were so loyal to him that whatever he said, they blindly accepted as truth. This agitated the Trump base. The Trump team then put in place a strategy to have rallies, speeches, and to file lawsuits in various courts to overturn those states' election results, hoping that by overturning those results, Trump could somehow manage to win. They even went to the Supreme Court. In all cases, the courts threw out their claims because they lacked evidence. They were based on hearsay, rumor, not on substantial evidence or facts. With all of these legal losses, Trump and his political allies began to encourage supporters to fight. You had Ted Cruz, for example, saying that Trump's voters were like patriots, right? They were fighting just like the Revolutionary War heroes fought at Bunker Hill or Valley Forge. You had people like Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, saying, hey, we're going to have trial by combat.
Let's have trial by combat.
You have people enabling Trump and echoing Trump's dangerous, violent rhetoric, which came to a dangerous head on January 6th, when what started out as a peaceful rally descended into chaos, insurrection, terrorism, when they marched to the Capitol, overwhelmed the building, and broke in. These people saw themselves as revolutionaries. In their minds, because Trump had told them, the election had been stolen from them. They had been cheated. The courts weren't there to support them. So in their minds, they thought the only recourse was violence. The only recourse was revolution.
What are we supposed to do? Okay? The Supreme Court's not helping us. No one's helping us. Only us can help us. Only we can do it.
That they had to storm, they had to siege the Capitol to take back what had been taken from them.
And why did you want to go in?
We're storming the Capitol. It's a revolution.
So these people with their Trump flags and MAGA accessories broke into the Capitol violently, looking for alternative measures to democracy. I can't think of a more un-American and unpatriotic thing to do. But these people have been spoon-fed lies from Trump, lies from QAnon, lies from internet chat rooms, fake news outlets, and tweets and social media, Facebook, whatever, for years. And so these people genuinely believe that what they were doing was the right thing to do, the patriotic thing to do. And so there they were, breaking into the Capitol, chanting that they're going to hang Mike Pence, the vice president. They're going to kill Nancy Pelosi. You could see them parading through with their flags, their Trump flags, breaking property, stealing Nancy Pelosi's podium, breaking placards on doors, and desecrating the very seat, the very heart of our American democracy. Many of us who were watching that day were heartbroken. I know I was. I love my country. I respect our democratic institutions. So it was incredibly disheartening and disgusting, frankly, to watch as mindless hordes of Trump supporters carried out an assault on our democracy, carried out an assault on our Capitol building, an attack on our Capitol which has not occurred since the War of 1812, when the British set the Capitol on fire. And among the most horrific images of that day was the image of a man carrying a Confederate flag. Now, during the Civil War, President Lincoln fought for the unity of the nation. We fought against the South, the Confederate South. And that Confederate flag symbolizes the Southern resistance. It symbolizes racism, slavery, white supremacy. And to see that flag carried through the halls of our Capitol is absolutely disgusting and reprehensible. It's just beyond disgusting. There's no other word for it, honestly. And so in a couple of weeks, in the same area where these domestic terrorists gathered, President-elect Joe Biden will be sworn in as the 46th president of the United States. He will have the task of healing our nation and bringing about reconciliation. But we as American people need to do better, right? We need to stop reading conspiracy theories, consuming fake news. We need to start having honest, open discussions with our family members, especially those who have fallen prey to this kind of misinformation, this kind of violent, insane rhetoric. And we need to hold politicians accountable, especially Trump. We cannot allow someone who is going to incite violence, incite a mob that attacks our Capitol. We can't allow someone like that to be president ever again. We have to reclaim our moral standing, we reclaim our leadership in the world, and we have to show the world that we are once again that beacon of hope, of democracy, that we can once again be looked up to and admired by the rest of the world. Instead of being looked down upon as a joke, a laughing stock, right, a punchline. But in order to do that, we have to embrace our Constitution, embrace our history, and embrace our democratic institutions, which have been ignored in recent years. And that's why it's so important that you are with me here in this U.S. history class. Let's learn from this really incredibly disappointing and disheartening event and never, ever, ever allow this to happen again. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. Tighten up, be cool, stay in school. All right, guys. Take care.